Welcome into a midweek episode, a Tedless episode of RFK Refugees. I'm your host, John, and with me I have with myself, Jason Anderson of Greenline Soccer. Jason, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, John. Good to see you.
The
Good. We're fighting tech problems, but we're getting through it.
We are. If this doesn't work, we're going to start writing letters to each other and mailing them, and then we'll post the transcript at the end of it.
Yeah.
At the top, I want to make sure that we talked about Jason's new enterprise. Make sure that you know where it is and you sign up today, so you can get a little bit more DC United daily news, or at least bi-weekly news in your inbox. So talk about Greenline Soccer, Jason.
Yeah. I left USA Today, and I still wanted to write about soccer. I took a job where I don't really write about the local teams, especially, but like American soccer in general is not really on my radar that much, and it was like kind of a hole in my life. So I was like, can I still do this? And there was no conflict of interest, so it was like, yeah, sure, if that's what you want to do with your leisure time. And I did. It turned out I would just fill that time with this anyway, so it is kind of selfish, but it is also hopefully useful. Just trying to fill a little bit of a void in the beat writing. After matches we get a lot of quotes and stuff like that tell you more than just what was happening on the field. It wasn't going anywhere. Maybe it goes into Blue Sky or like a chopped up version, and it's like oh yeah, I made this point, but it was really brief, and I don't like to do brief. So this is the place. The articles are long. If you don't like long articles, I don't know what to tell you. I'll try and make them shorter, but I'm not going to try that hard.
Don't try. Still subscribe, and you can just feed Jason's articles to a summarizer, and then you can read that. But he's not going to go shorter just for you. I don't think that's going to happen.
It's just not in me. Maybe some of them will be a little shorter, but not really.
It's actually an additional tier to make them shorter. It's the normal fee, and then if you double or triple it, Jason will just do what I just said and be like, here's the entire article in 250 words if you really want it that
I'll
way.
just refer you to Blue Sky again.
There you go.
Like I kind of, so a lot of this is, I had a jumping off point that I posted already. That's the summary. The rest of it is expounding.
Jason is also making sure. So the thing I always think about, you mentioned sort of the drive-by questions that happen in the post game in the mix zone. The thing that is always the top of my mind whenever I think about that is when Jason and I were standing next to each other in a Spirit mix zone, and there was a guy that was asking every player about the importance of nutrition and the food pyramid. And he asked Alex Morgan, so he could have asked Alex Morgan anything. Alex Morgan walking through there might have been her last time in Audi Field as a player. I'm not sure.
And also kind of, we got lucky that San Diego is willing to bring her by, because the nature of that game was, as with most Spirit San Diego games, was the Spirit had scored a very late goal to change the result. And yeah, they brought her over, and we got like 4 questions, and this guy got his in. It is a mix zone skill. But yeah, I would prefer if the questions stuck to soccer, because I need that raw material to do what I'm trying to get people to subscribe for. This is what the whole thing is, right?
I'm fairly certain that guy was a public affairs officer at the U.S. like the Food and Drug Administration. I think he just wanted a newsletter. He's like, I got to get this quote, and he did. Congrats to him.
Yeah.
So Jason's going to keep it more soccer related, at least in a less tangential way, I think, for anything that he puts together. If not, I would also subscribe to that. I would like sort of just like the problem is you have some credibility to maintain and professionalism to uphold, but I think like asking sort of these harebrained off the wall questions just to see reactions, that would also be interesting.
I mean, I did ask on this past weekend. I asked the Spirit if they were going to get to not Cookout, but In-N-Out, since they were in California, and apparently they were told that the In-N-Out near where they were staying was closed due to it was Easter, so they were denied their In-N-Out experience. So
man,
you do have to throw those in because players do get tired of the monotony. But you can't always do it. You have to get some soccer questions in before you get to the, hey, so what fast food do you guys want to eat that your coaches are probably like, could you not?
Imagine asking that of a Losada coach team. There would have been real
He would
problems.
have frowned, I think.
They would have said, we heard your interview with Jason Anderson, and we have to have a conversation. Come in and close the door.
Yeah.
By the way, that In and Out is the one I think probably near PayPal Park, which is the one I used to go to all the time when I would go to Earthquakes games. So I know that one well. That is a weird. Have you? I'm sure you've been out there for stuff before to San Jose for games.
Not this. I've been to San Jose, but not. It was before the stadium existed. Was the last time
Okay,
I was there. So I was.
it's
I was at the airport, which is right there, but I
you
was
were right
not
there. You could
at
have
the
walked
stadium.
50 feet and have been
Yeah.
to, in the future home. I think I went there before and after. There was a big sign that said "Future Home of San Jose Earthquakes." I remember seeing that and then having
Hmm.
a hamburger. All right, let's dive into. I think as we always say when we talk before the show starts, like we've avoided it long enough. We've avoided talking about DC United long enough, but let's do it now. DC United had an interesting offseason, an offseason that, from a pure numbers perspective, as they often sort of made sure that we were aware, they definitely spent money. If you were going to say these owners are cheap, they don't spend money, you can't say that technically anymore. I think, ball knowers have not been saying that for a while. They've just been saying, boy, you spend money very unintelligently. You take really bad advice when you spend money. But I think, if you listen to this show, or maybe if you read Jason's preview, I'm trying to remember now how optimistic you were. Probably not super optimistic. Uh, there was a hope that the floor was raised, and this is not a team that's going to get trounced at home anymore. This is not a team that's going to get embarrassed anymore. At least they may not be able to create anything. And I'll let you repeat your line too. They may not be able to create anything, but they're also not going to get beaten up really bad. But you had a better quote about,
Uh,
at least before this weekend,
yeah.
what DC
My,
United
mine
might
was
be.
just if they're not bad, they're going to be boring. And they were for 5 games pretty boring and
Hmm.
not bad. I would stop short of saying good. They were good at certain things. And then this weekend happened, and now the flaws in the weekend's performance are the like exact flaws that they needed to not have happen. Which is like this is not a team that can afford 70 minutes of effort and then 20 minutes of like, well, this one's a lost cause. Let's pack it in, because then they get demolished. Instead of just losing, they get hammered. This is not a team that if they take their foot off the gas pedal a little bit, they are all of a sudden getting lapped. They really have to give it everything for the entire season to keep this competitive because that's where they're at. Like realistically, they are better than they were last year, but they're also not a team that can get away with taking it easy. They won't have that luxury anytime this entire season.
For a roster composed in this way, for a season as long as MLS is, and for the parity that exists all throughout it, it does not seem like a good strategy for competition being, in order to be competitive, you have to have 100% effort at every time and always have breaks go your way and hope that you can get a 1-0 victory. That is certainly the condition they find themselves in, like their best outcome, their best possible outcome. But it seems like that's not optimal. It seems like, particularly for a team that spent, $12 million in the offseason, it seems like you would want to have a different set of potential outcomes to choose from.
You would, but also they are coming from as far back as they were coming. And
Hmm.
this wasn't a one season roster rebuild. I think the days of that happening in MLS are gone. Um, I'm thinking back to like after 2013, if people remember that season, they came out and they had this unique set of scenarios where they got the Open Cup Champions League spot, so they got bonus money for that. They got bonus money for missing the playoffs. The re-entry draft that year was probably the best it's ever been, et cetera, et cetera. They had this incredible like just a convergence of circumstance that was like if you were ever gonna be the worst team in MLS, this was and win the Open Cup. This was the season to do it.
Yeah.
And that next season they finished I think 6 points off the Supporters Shield. Um, you can't do that anymore in this league. The top of the league has gotten too good, and I don't think you could have done it with DC United's contract, the contract situation they entered this winter in. I think they made a bunch of pretty smart moves to get better. Monteanu being the obvious question mark at this
Hmm.
point. His time in Romania, there's a season that you're like, wow, that looks really good, and then there's a season that's like, ooh, not so much. Um, we don't know what's going on. He hasn't played that much. Then he picked up the knock that he's just now coming back from. Um, but yeah, it's the team's ceiling is still very low. And I think in one in one window they got a lot done, but they didn't get everything done. They're still very thin in the midfield, and I think they've also just in general they don't have enough speed kind of across the board. Those are the two things that I think are the biggest concern right now. Is that and that's the nature of going into the transfer market knowing you need so much,
Right.
you're probably not going to get everything. If you need as much as they did, if your shopping list is that long, just like when you go to the grocery store, they're going to be out of, if you need cabbage for the recipe, you might have to go to the second grocery store. The first one might be out. And DC found that, for whatever reason, maybe it was maybe they pursued some stuff that didn't pan out, that it just hasn't come to light. I don't know, but they entered the season with improvements and important moves, but also some holes that are still like kind of, if you don't fill the holes in the roster, you can't play some other way. And that's where they're kind of at right now. Is that I think Weiler said after, I can't remember which game it was, maybe the Austin game, or maybe it was the Chicago game, but it was kind of like, we can't dominate games right now. It's just not within the
Yep.
group. We don't have the ingredients to do that job. So we have to find some other way to win games. And like you said, it's not optimal. No one wants to enter the season being like, okay, if we really max out today and we get some breaks, we can win the game. Because if you do that 34 times, 10 of those times at least, you're not going to get the break. And probably have to throw in 10 or more times where you're not going to max out effort wise. They did manage to max out effort wise, I think, in, I would say, 4 of the 5. The Austin loss was also not super high intensity. Austin's not very good in either, in my opinion. And DC still wasn't able to match them or even really keep them under wraps. It was kind of a like, maybe we'll get out of here with the draw was the vibe that they were giving me.
Right.
And then they couldn't, they gave up the penalty, or was it a penalty in that game? I think it was a penalty.
Yes.
And that was it. It was like, well, they're not coming back. They did come back against Chicago, and I thought the same thing was going to happen there. It's like, that's it. This team was playing for a 0-0. They don't have goals in them tonight. They gave up the penalty. That's it. Turns out they got some breaks after that, but you can't. That's not going to happen very often either. The Dallas game, though, it really does come back to the flaws in the group don't give them any other margins to do things in a different way or get away with even backing off. And so they were already losing that game. I think once they gave up the second goal, I think they were definitely going to lose regardless.
Yes.
But if they had kept up the effort level as they had in the other matches, they get out of there with a 2-0 or maybe a 2-1. Though I don't know that they were going to create a goal in that game. Dallas seemed to have their measure completely. But still 2-0 and you're trying hard. People are unhappy, but they're not mad.
It doesn't reset the narrative the way
Yeah.
a 4-0 drubbing does, and I think that's important to focus on. Right? I would say we have been talking about the Good Doctor's LinkedIn habit for the entire time of his being here. It's now broken contain. I talked about it on SoccerWise. Matt Doyle is now quoting it in his newsletter. The entire world has now noticed how insane these posts are, and they'll always come, win or lose. There'll be a post, but the struggle is like trying to. This team is very interested in crafting a new narrative, right? They wanted to, after last season's sell the team for many months, the no drums in the stadium, the just emergency. We need to have the owners on Fox 5 talking about this team. It's gotten that bad before and after everyone was fired and let go. A 4-0 loss throws a giant wrench into the narrative wagon that was moving forward. Like, this team is, we're not going to blow anyone away, but we're playing disciplined soccer. There's no quit in this team. And you're right. Like, they up to this point they had. I don't call it evidence, call it past performance, call it whatever you want.
Right.
It feels like a loss like this has a good way of spiraling pretty quickly for this team, because if it was all about belief that this is different, you saw in the post game remarks by Bartlett, by the manager, by like they're like we all quit, everyone quit. This was the old team that showed up again. I thought we had banished them to the I don't know, the zone at which they will not return, but they're back. Here we are.
Yeah.
Uh, what do you think that this team has it in them to put a stop to this, or do you think that they, based on those quotes, they also see like, oh,
Well,
maybe we're bad again?
I mean, I do think that there was a level of alarm in the post game in with everybody. I think maybe not Sylvan Hefty, who came and talked to us as well. Sylvan didn't see last year, so he doesn't have to think back to,
Right.
he
He
didn't
doesn't
live
have like
last
he doesn't have
year.
a 1,000 mile stare when
Right.
he's thinking
And
about
so
United.
and so his was very much like, well, it's not good enough. The effort tonight was not what we know what it is going to take for us to get results, and we know that we didn't do it tonight. So for him, it was very much kind of pretty cut and dry. With Bartlett, with Brandon Servania, I think Bartlett's exact quote was, he said we quit, and then he corrected. He said it wasn't everyone, which is maybe even
That's
more.
way worse.
It could be. It could be. It'll really depend on, one, can they clarify that within the group? Are the players that were perceived as giving up, do they accept that that's how it was? Because if they come in and they're like, hey, I think you're one of the guys that gave up, and they're like, I don't agree with that, then you've got a schism. Yeah, you don't. Those aren't just like we're having a disagreement. That's a like we might never get along again as teammates
Yep.
level accusation. But Weiler said, we want to reset the culture and change the culture. And obviously, a game like this tells us that we are not done doing that. So that's good that he wasn't like, oh, everyone has a bad night every once in a while, because that would be lying to yourself. But yeah, I think my sense is that he really knows that this is the thing that could tank this season. Tank this season in relative terms. Obviously, this team is not competing with Nashville and Miami. This team, if it's in the playoff race in the final month of the season, has had a pretty good season. We're grading on a curve here. But yeah, I think he knows that this is the thing that could have them sinking back down to where, or I'm looking at Orlando having an absolute hell of a season. Montreal Montreal looks kind of like what people thought DC were going to look like. And Montreal, people expected this of Montreal. It's not like they're surprised to find themselves
Right.
in this situation, but yeah, I think this is the kind of stuff that DC internally knows. It's one thing to lose at home, but to lose in this manner where fans come away saying, I think they gave up on the night, and players and coaches are like,
Confirming it.
yeah, that is, you guys are not wrong. That's poison potentially. That's not a we shook this thing off and it's just a one off. This week in training needs to be as good of a week as they've had, which unfortunately I don't think anyone's going to get any real info on. We're just going to find out on match day whether they solved it or not. It would not shock me if Weiler makes some changes to the lineup, based on if you see players that have been starting suddenly not starting, then you have to assume that they're in the quit band
Right.
wagon right now. But we'll
The
see.
Scarlet Q.
Yeah, yeah. And obviously we know one change is coming, or I shouldn't say we know, but we can suspect that Sean Nealis won't be back in the lineup. That injury looked pretty bad. The way he was coming off with his shoulder, kind of moving his hand but not moving his arm, never a great sign
No.
for the shoulder joint, which is complicated as is. So I would expect bad news on that front. But he was also probably just getting a one game stand in for Kai Rolls. So that's a change that I would say take that one off the table. But everyone else, if they are suddenly not in the lineup, you have to wonder. Maybe Ty Baribo.
That was
he
my
came
that
out-
was my other
yeah,
concern.
he did look like we didn't get to. The press conference was very focused on the disaster of the game, so there wasn't a lot of info on I think Weiler did say it was precautionary, but that doesn't give us much info in terms of, is he just just to get him out of this game because next week is important too? Or is this a like, we don't want a 2 week injury to become a 6 week injury? That we don't know yet. So those two, I think, take them off the table. But the other nine starters, or maybe not even starters, because like Jackson Hopkins came out of the game before the give up really got obvious. So maybe the guys that came out earlier, you can sort of take them out of the equation. But anyone that was on the field in those last 25 minutes, and then they suddenly aren't in the lineup on the weekend, maybe this is a signal. I think that's doesn't take great insight to put those two together, I think.
It's the worst game of Guess Who possible for DC United fans. You
Right.
can start to narrow it down. I want to talk about Rene Weiler because he is an interesting character to me. I think that we have had from Ben Olsen to I would say that was the sort of the previous to him, that was the far end of the spectrum as far as prickliness in post game conferences. And then you have Troy Lesesne, who was really just at the beginning, at least before things went really bad, was I seemed to me emotionally open, very thoughtful, very gentle in the reception of his questions, even if he thought the question was not fair or dumb. He seemed to be playing ball. Rene Weiler is very Teutonic. He's very Swiss. He's very matter of fact. If he doesn't like a question, he doesn't like the question. It's kind of obvious. If he's answered the question before from another reporter and you've tried to rephrase it in a way to try to get something else out of him, he will just say what he said before. He's interesting. From your perspective of being there, being in those press conferences more often, what's your takeaway on sort of his personality? And I wouldn't ask you to try to read into like his like mental state at the moment. Does he seem like a satisfied coach generally? But it's interesting to me because he's a different character, and also he's got a track record of not staying in jobs for very long, and usually because it's an issue, or at least what we hear, it's like an issue with ownership, or the upper administration is not happy with the way things are, and then goes to a new place. What's your read on him as a coach and as a guy?
So I will say he's been in, let's be honest, like bigger jobs than this job. This used to be the biggest job in American club soccer. Those days are long gone. But yeah, I think he's seen bigger pressure scenarios than this. And thus, from that front, he's not going to fold or lose his cool in a press conference. I think his answers have been very concise. And I'll say selfishly, I would prefer the longer press conferences, the ones that go on a little more. That even if they're prickly, even if you're getting pushback, you are getting something. But I think this is the experience he's had in some of these big jobs, is that you need to be very controlled in what you say, because if you say the wrong thing, if you put it clumsily, and he's speaking English as a second language, or
Right.
I think a third or fourth language, as with many Swiss folks and really many people everywhere except the U.S., he speaks multiple languages. So, but yeah, I think he's very intentional in what he's doing. He's not coming to the press conference and shooting from the hip. And that can be good. It can help the team through a moment like this for sure. I think, spent some time probably discussing with the coaching staff what he should say before he came out. And he did say, we have to talk about the last 15, 20 minutes. The team quit. He said it was unbelievable more than once.
He seems candid though, even though
Yes.
he's measured, he is very candid. He does not seem to be like obfuscation guy. He's like, I'm going to tell you what I think,
Yeah.
but I'm also not going to hang myself either.
Yeah, exactly. And so this was a case where he said what he thought. He didn't, in this case, the control is more like not going on and on about how upset you are
Right.
and not really
Right.
letting on. Like his tone of voice was not it wasn't like getting louder. Um, I think maybe one of those unbelievables might have had an exclamation point behind it, but not like three exclamation points. But yeah, I think he knows that this is a difficult one. That he stepped into a job where it's not just, okay, the team was bad last year and we can rebuild it. The team was bad the year before, and the year before, and the year before. And that the team has also changed from, you mentioned Losada earlier, they changed from his way of playing to Wayne Rooney's way of playing to Troy Lesesne's way of playing. The switch before Losada, you mentioned Ben Olsen. All of these are very different approaches, and the rosters have been built towards that over and over again. And if you keep changing those things, you don't have a coherent plan. You just have a bunch of guys. And I think he knows that as well. And so that's why the system is very extremely stripped down, very much back to basics kind of stuff. This is why you see them playing long. It's because playing long is easier. I think it's very much a like, I understand that this team, I'm speaking as him, but I think he comes in knowing that this team isn't capable of playing more entertaining soccer. And so he's like, okay, we have to put that out of our minds. We have to be realistic about what we are. And we still have the obligation to go try and win games. Us not being ready to play beautiful soccer doesn't matter. The game days are coming. And so we will try and play to win. I think he's gotten buy-in from the group, which is important. Coming in last year, I think almost his entire first 4 months was basically just like, this is all evaluation. Right. We are not betting in tactical concepts for next year. I'm just learning what you can and can't do and who can and can't stick around for next season.
He is finding players on Montreal that he wants to sign immediately. That's part. He was doing scouting on his opposition, Caden Clark, quickly coming over.
I mean, I've never put too much stock in that, just because it's the only reporting we got was, I think that was a Tom Bogert line that he said, like, Weiler likes this player. But we also have to remember that DC changed GMs not long thereafter.
Dave Casper also may have liked this player.
Right. And other people in the organization that were in place in the holding pattern before Soget was actually an employee of the club may have liked that player. So it's one of those things where the club's higher level processes have been messed up for so long that I'm kind of like, yes, they made a trade quickly, and then Clark got here, had the concussion almost right away, and then kind of didn't play. That side of it is a little curious to me, because if Weiler was one of the people that liked him, then why didn't he play once he was fit to play? Because he was in uniform. Like, the concussion didn't last that whole time. But in any case, you made the point about how maybe in the past he'd, pushed up against things with the clubs he was at, that he just didn't, he saw it one way and they saw it another. I have to imagine that at DC United, that will be a thing, because it's happened enough times where, regardless of what you think of, Losada left, the club made the right decision to fire him, but also part of that narrative was they came to him and said, you have to do things a certain way. And he said, no. But I'm sure there were also things that he was saying that weren't damaging ideas, that were good ideas. And the club was like, no, we don't want to do that. Yeah. With Wayne Rooney, I guess Rooney was the one that kind of got like, okay, Wayne, do whatever you want. And we saw that did not work.
Right. Rappel Morrison, come on down.
Right. So the club has been kind of all over the place. And I'm sure that there are things that he said, we're doing this incorrectly. We have to correct it. The level to which they do that probably depends on his relationship with Soget, which I understand might not have as much of a history as maybe was advertised before they got here. I don't think they knew each other especially well. It's just more like they knew of one another, rather than this being like, yeah, we found these two guys that have worked together a bunch. I don't think that was the case. But yeah, I think in terms of being a realist and someone who's not going to waste his words, but like you said, he is going to say, this performance was bad. If they play bad, he's going to be like, I don't think we played well today. He's not going to hammer the players in public, even when they deserve it. Like, he could have absolutely demolished them on Saturday. He just said, he said his piece in his opening question, and then he kind of moved on. He could have brought it back to like, and again, this was bad, blah, blah, blah. He didn't really do that. That presser was still only, I think, 6 or 7 minutes long. That is the space he's looking to. So I'm curious to see how he handles this, because it's not his first challenge as DC United head coach, because his first day was his first challenge as DC United head coach. But I think this is the trickiest one, because how he responds to the nature of the way they lost to Dallas, it really is going to determine, I think, whether this team can recover and be this, punching above their weight in a dreadful Eastern Conference, by the way.
Hmm.
I've watched a couple other games around the East when I've had the chance, and I've been like, this is rough. Like there are like three teams where I'm like, okay, this is a good team, and then everyone else I'm like, oh, this is how has this happened that all of you are in the same conference?
It is
Good for
good
DC
to.
though.
I was gonna say it's good that there's lots of competition for wooden spoons, and there's teams that look much more odds-on favorite than even if everything were to go wrong for DC United, there are teams that are gonna be below them most
Yes.
likely.
I
So that's
mean,
good. That's an improvement.
right. Orlando, Montreal. I've got the expected goal difference chart, and DC is actually ahead of New England. I didn't expect to see that. They're not ahead of them in the table, but they are ahead of them in terms of even they've actually generated more chances, even, which is shocking to me
That's
because
insane.
the Revs have a 6-1 win and a 3-0 win.
That's
So
crazy.
it is it's a weird year, but it's a good year to be a bad team.
Yeah,
That is maybe not as bad as the other ones. But
that's
DC
DC United's
has
slogan for this year. They
I
should have. That's marketing materials right there.
yeah, I mean it's a real tough thing to try and sell people on, but it is the truth. Like they are better than they were last year. The East is worse than it was last year, and maybe that's enough to get in the mix. Because like I said earlier, like DC's goal this year is to just be involved in September. Last year September came around and it was like no one wants to talk about this team nationally, much less watch it. And if they can get in the mix where it's like, hey, DC's at insert Eastern Conference opponent, and you know what? They're in the mix between that 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 range. To me, that would be for DC that's a huge step forward, quite frankly. It's also a very tiny step in real terms if we take the curve away and we're just grading on 0 to 100. But that's where the club is. And so if a small step forward is what they can manage this year, great. But yeah, Weiler this week is a huge test as far as whether he can actually make that culture change he talked about. Can he make it happen? We'll find out in the next couple of weeks, I would say.
Jason mentioned our technical challenges that we're dealing with. So we now have a ticking clock of 7 minutes before this Zoom call
Okay,
expires. So I wanna quickly ask two questions about DC United and then make sure we have some time for the Spirit.
sure.
Uh, your assessment on Luis from what you've seen and trying to understand where we were told at the beginning to give more patience to him and that he would come when he would come. Obviously, picked up an injury. And then I want to know what your read on the Aaron Herrera. Is there a situation or is it just he was injured and now he's not anymore? Both of those players.
So with Monteanu, I think I haven't seen enough out of him, but then when you compare it to the other players that have played the second forward role so far, he's been better than them.
Hmm.
Gabriel Pirani is really struggling to make an
Oof.
impact on games at all. Joao Peglo does not look comfortable when he's had to shift up there. And Hopkins, when he's played up there, he and Pirani end up switching. Both times he's started as a forward, he ends up at right midfield. And after the Miami game, he said himself that it was a switch that he and Pirani were like, we'll switch it up ourselves. And Weiler was like, yeah, that was one that we're okay with them. They read the game and they made the call. So I assume that happened again against Dallas. As far as his level, I think I think we need to see a start before we can even really dig into it because he's coming into these games where the terms are already set and he's kind of trying to find it. Against Miami, I thought he was showing some signs of life. And then obviously he immediately after that picks up the knock and then misses a couple games and comes into this Dallas match when, like we've been talking about, not really a lot to work off
Right.
of. Let's be kind. He didn't have a lot to play off of from his teammates. As far as Herrera, I think it was just the knock, and he did become a father. He actually brought
Awesome.
his baby. I don't know. He brought the baby into the locker room. I think it was the baby's first game on Saturday. So that's a nice positive for within the locker room, at least. At least one positive from a
They did that
nightmare.
that was the Dallas game he did that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And
Poor
so
baby's first game. That's
yeah,
unfortunate for the
exactly.
baby.
Hopefully better ones in the future. But yeah, we'll see. Like Hefty has played well enough that Herrera's got competition on his hands, but we also saw those games last year where Weiler played him as a midfielder.
Hmm.
And so maybe he gets pushed up the wing, and maybe that lets you bring Hopkins inside. Certainly not enough. I think after Baribo and Hopkins, the other players that are options to play up front and on the wing have not done enough to keep Herrera restricted to the back line. So we'll see there as well as to whether he gets in the mix, or maybe he came in and Weiler was like, "You're one of the guys that was at part of the problem at the end of the match." I don't think that he was, but maybe there's a different perception internally. We'll find out a lot when this game against the Revs kicks off.
So I think we could have another entire 40-minute call on the Spirit, just solely based on the narrative police and the narrative that was running away before this most recent victory. But if you've been paying attention to the Spirit, from my perspective, the story has been one of a lack of cutting edge, a lack of a real preseason with all the players involved, and some individual mistakes resulting in goals or not opportunities to win that did not come through. The Bay game changed that up a little bit. I want to give you the floor for 3 minutes to say why this team is not, or maybe I don't want to put words in your mouth, but the fans on Reddit and wherever else be like, this is because Troy got traded or Croy got traded. That's the extent of what's going on here. What is your read on this, the slow sort of crawl out of where this, for at least from the standings perspective, where the Spirit are right now?
I just pulled up their expected goals are the highest in NWSL right now.
Yeah.
They have created more chances than Orlando and San Diego. Their expected goal difference is tied for second with Orlando. They only trail San Diego. These are good indicators. The fact that they've missed some big chances obscures the fact that they are creating the big chances.
DC United wishes that they had that many
exactly.
chances created.
And as a fan, of course, there's going to be it's an acute agony of watching Lacey Santos not turn in that early chance at Bay. Because if she puts that one away, the way that they were performing, I think this is a blowout win. Bay did not have a sniff of that game. They could not figure out what to do. Their best solution was to basically hunker in and get to halftime and then see if they could figure it out in the locker room. They didn't. The Spirit were the better team in that one by far, and they were the better team by far against Utah. I think Esme Morgan said they should have scored 6. I don't know if I would have gone that far, but they probably should have had like 3 on the board so that Sandy McKeever's throwing error doesn't matter. It just becomes well, you don't want that to happen, but oh well. Instead of it changes the result. It changes the whole narrative around the team. I think they're doing really well. They are lacking the central thrust from Bethune. The dribbling in particular is missing because Lacey Santos, she'll use a move, but it's more to get you out of her way so she can make the pass, whereas Bethune's trying to go past you. It's a different type of player, but they've also adjusted to it by just saying, okay, we can create different ways. We don't have to be the same team as last year to be as effective at creating chances. Rose Kawasi is absolutely cooking defenders.
Yep.
Trinity Rodman, if we played this season as a simulation, if we did the Monte Carlo style simulation of 10,000 reps, I think she would have 3 or 4 goals by now. She's been very unlucky with Jordan Bloomer and Mia Justice playing out of their minds against her in particular. So yeah, I think they are actually doing quite well, and it might not feel that way because of the missed chances. But trust me, they are doing what they need to do to continue to win games like they did against Bay. The Bay game should be more normal than not normal for this team. There you go.
So everybody take a deep breath. It's all right. It's a long season. They're going to be okay. We're about to wrap up. Jason, thank you for joining us. I hate to have cut the show off like this, but Zoom is going to make us do it. So everybody subscribe to Greenline Soccer. Follow Jason on Blue Sky. If you're listening to this, you're already doing those things, but do it anyway. Jason, thanks for coming. I appreciate it.
Thanks, John.
Bye-bye.
All right. See you, man. Or is this going to kick us off or just make us stop?
It will in like a 5 seconds. I appreciate it, man.